Hey, today's no, Sunday, May 21st, but tomorrow will be Monday, May 22nd, and tomorrow will be the start of a very big day for the Oakland is Las Vegas Ballpark project. And the reason is that it marks the day that the bill that will set the financing plan for the ballpark at the Tropicana will be released first to legislators and then the public, as I understand it. And I was also informed that there are several drafts of the bill that have been flying around but never made public. So part of what you've heard and what I've been told came from those drafts, and the drafts were changed. There's reaction to that, and that was inefficiently communicated because they really aren't supposed to be communicated to begin with. That's the way life goes in this internet world. What I expect will happen through the subsequent weeks is we'll have to have a better handle on what's being proposed and what the legislature thinks about it and whether or not it'll go to closed session. I still believe that at the end of the day, this will go to closed session, and the people that are involved in the projects, that's not a big deal. It goes to closed session and there's no rush to have it passed by, as much as some people in the media protest to the contrary based on what little they get. Um, I will say this, however, any idea that the Athletics are returning to Oakland should be junked because the Athletics left Oakland a year ago. They started the process in March of 2021, got further along, and made the right decisions, albeit with some fits and starts, to get to the point that they're at now. They are at a point where legislation will be introduced in an environment completely different from California, the Bay Area, that is exceptionally pro development. And what's been heaped up on this process, or tried to be heaped up on this process, is kind of what happened when the Raiders are trying to leave to Las Vegas, us Californians looking at everything through our lens, and at the end of the day, completely not getting what we saw. And I resolved to not make that mistake this time. Let me be absolutely clear. The fundamental difference between this project and Howard Terminal is the all but complete absence of constant chatter by any elected official. You have not heard one elected official weigh in on this, except the governor. That's it. And that's the way it should be. And even then, it wasn't a long speech. The governor did not make himself the face of the project. The face of the project, rightfully, really, were John Fisher and Dave Cobble, not an elected official. And that was the same way with the Raiders. The face of the project there arguably was Sheldon Adelson and Mark Davis. Okay. But it wasn't a politician. And that's when I get to this point of this being process oriented rather than political, because you don't have a politician trying to put their face in front of the whole thing and make it their own baby, which is a recipe for disaster. I believe that the Athletics will just realization that they need to give up their desire to want tax increment revenue and allow the bond structure to work so that the debt coverage ratio of every $2 of revenue to every $1 bond cost is met, ideally surpassed. That's been the situation all along. Some have tried to portray this as, well, you give me 192 million and I give you this. And that's not the way it actually works. The way it actually works is how much money are we expecting to get from revenue? And of that, what percentage are you willing to give up? And really, when you're talking about tax increment financing revenue, there should not be a kickback to the developer unless it's for infrastructure or something of that order. And then it's not a kickback, it's actually part of the proceeds. Okay. And we've already dealt with that because the proceeds should be, I expect them to be 395 million. I don't expect a reduction. The only reason there was made noise about a reduction was because the county rightfully feared that the athletics bankers were tone deaf with respect to the fact that the county is sharing in risk by putting its general fund up as what's called the backstop. What that means is what the backstop is this, excuse me. It says that if I don't get enough revenue to cover the bond debt on an annual basis, then I have to dip into the general fund. And that's what that says. So what I expect is a lease revenue bond structure to be introduced. What I expect is language that pertains to Las Vegas Stadium Authority to be introduced, so that the Las Vegas Stadium Authority will be the owner of the facility. What I expect is that the athletics will be asked to pay a possessory interest tax. Now, you would say, how is that different from a property tax? And I would say that if since the Las Vegas Stadium Authority is expected to own the ballpark, the A's are not the private owner of the facility. They are building the facility so that it be transferred to the Las Vegas Stadium Authority. And so, since a public organization is owning it, the fee that the athletics pay is not rent, but is a possessory interest tax. So, there should be no rent charged for the stadium. Now, that's separate from the rent issue between Bally's and the athletics on the property because that has to do with the property and not the facility. It's a difference. I think it's interesting that Bally's chose the position they did, but that's another story for another time. Now, are there any deal breakers? Well, no. In fact, the only deal breaker was that the athletics really not kind to athletics, but or their bankers, but it's a fact. The athletics bankers said to the county, "You have to share some risk with us, meaning give up some of that revenue." Well, the simple act of a county this offering to float a bond on behalf of a private organization is risk. They are accepting that the risk that this bond issue won't work and they'll wind up paying it out of the general fund, thereby moving out of the way money set aside for service expenditures to a degree, not entirely because is going to completely gigantically encumber the Clark County budget. It's just too large for that, and this project too small comparatively with respect to the county's entire budget and its costs. But you don't want to have a bond issue go into default because it means that it wasn't properly structured. It means that it's not really great to invest in. It means that the yield, the rates will have to be higher. It means it'll have to be more expensive, and if that's the case, then it means that the cost to service that debt on an annual basis will be greater, and that means that they'll have to come up with more money anyway, and but means they'll have to dig more out of the general fund because of that. See, so you want to make absolutely certain upfront you have enough revenue coming in. That was the idea. And the athletics reduction in need from 500 million to 395 million is a reflection of the fact that they now have developer partners who are willing to put money in the project, and that's what's enough to say for them to say, hey, you know what? Uh, reduce that need. Now, I know what the athletics were thinking. They were thinking because I believe at one point Dave Cobble said this, so they were looking for a hotel tax. And I said to him, I don't think it's a good idea to go into Las Vegas six guns a blazing and saying, I need a hotel tax," when they just passed one 5 years ago for the Raiders and 6 years ago, actually, for the Raiders, that required a 88 101% increase in the hotel tax. And that was hard to get. It should have been 1%, really almost 7/10 of a percent, just too low. So you go in and ask for more of that, and then try to justify your act on the basis of expected visitors, and you say you're going to add 2.5 million visitors to the total. When, look, let's put that in perspective. Las Vegas enjoys a visitation rate of between 40 and 45 million visitors a year. I mean, it's great to have the extra 2 million, but don't think that Las Vegas can't get that from someplace else. It can. Now, it would love to have baseball for the fact that if you have the athletics in your city, then the shift of attention goes away from Oakland. It's no longer the Oakland Athletics, to Las Vegas, which is now the Las Vegas Athletics. And that power cannot be overestimated. Kate asks, "Do you think this will go to a separate session?" I think so. I think so. I would be quite surprised if it came vote before the session was over. I really would. I don't want it to happen. I expect time and adjustment, and then vote. And and I expect that vote to happen in a special session. There are some people who don't want that to happen. But I personally believe that with this rushed, I personally believe that this rushed to get this done approach, good idea to put on the brakes, let the take their view of it, and then make sure they're comfortable with what presenting them, make the necessary adjustments on that basis, and then go forward. But to just put this out there and just say, okay, vote for it as almost as is, even in the magnitude of this project, in fact, a kiss of death. It's not a good idea at all. It just isn't. So I think, hope that answers your question. Uh, Now, the other part of this is what the mayor says, Shang Town. And she's, because a number of you folks don't want the A's to leave. I've said it before, and I'll say it again. I was prepared for the A's to leave a year plus ago because the city has not handled this project in a process-oriented way. Handled it in a so the milestones are all media driven. So there's a vote that comes to the BCDC, but it's communicated by the media. My point is this: nothing communicated by a deliberative body. Okay, the Oakland City Council hasn't made a decision on this. It has not passed Howard Terminal. So for Chang to say that Howard was entitled is wholly incorrect. And it calls into question if she can really deliver on the project in the fantasy instance that the Athletics decided to try again. If the Athletics came back to Oakland, she herself said it would take an additional 2 years of work. She said that. So we're at 2023, 2024, 2025. So she finishes like 2025, 2026. They're already a year behind where they believe they would be in Las Vegas by having a ballpark finish by 2027, which I still think is a stretch. But I think if they come back to the Bay Area, given all the problems to be worked out, given the politics, it will take longer. The only way to assure that it won't is if Shang now, right now, the one thing that the mayor could do right now is say, Howard Terminal, the Howard Terminal Public Financing Authority, we're going to write the structure financing plan. We're going to get out of the way what we need to get out of the way, even though the athletic are there. But instead, what they've done is they stopped. And their action proves something that the government had said to me back in 2016, that Oakland is essentially reactive. In other words, we're not planning, and we don't. Look at the way we run Joint Powers Authority. I don't want to get off on a cliff. Or look at what's going on with Oakland Roots, and how we're just acquiescing to what this small organization wants. And you would say, am I being insulting of the Roots? No, I'm telling the truth. The Coliseum and the city of Oakland has to start acting like a big planning dog, the one that everybody adheres to, rather than a small organization saying adhere to us because we're soccer. All right, that's exactly as I read it. We can go anyplace else. You need to adhere to us, but we want to be Oakland. Okay, okay, and we have this politician behind us. All right. And everybody's just sort of laying down, like, oh, yeah, absolutely. And not even stopping to think about, among other things, naming rights agreement. The naming rights agreement thought, for want of a better term, to that outside piece of land and say, hey, look, anything that happens right there is also part of our naming rights window. And therefore, we can say, hey, that activity is part of the stadium. If that's the case, does our insurance cover that? If something happens on those grounds, are we liable? Are we giving it all up to the Roots? These are all questions that haven't even been fleshed out. We're just letting that thing hang out there. Literally. The Roots should be in the Coliseum. And that scenario has never been completely thought through. And that is a continuation of the unprofessionalism that got us into trouble in the Las Vegas and led the A's to first look at Portland and then seriously consider and then do Las Vegas. That's the process. Now, coming back to Las Vegas, where I see the project having a problem, but a solvable one is traffic and having the Tropicana there and then replacing it, which is relatively sleepy in its activity compared to a 35,000 seat ballpark or 30,000 seat ballpark, invites the question of, well, what's the vehicular traffic going to look like? And are the arterials capable of handling that? And I know that area extremely well. And the answer is the boulevards along those sections are wide, but they have never seen the onslaught of traffic that will take place when the athletics ballpark is under construction and it's finished. And if it looks anything like what Ben Garcia came up with, people just driving over or walking over to get a glimpse of it will cause an unprecedented. Now, hey, people like that sort of thing. It's also walkable. But I think there needs to be a thinking through of where parking locations are located. I will say this, it will be a boon for that area of the Las Vegas Strip. I repeat, it will be a boon for that area of the Las Vegas Strip, particularly on the days where it's open air and you can hear the crowd yelling because of a base hit or a home run, right? That will reverberate throughout the Strip. Think about it. That will reverberate throughout the Strip. The Strip has never seen that before because Allegiant Stadium is sufficiently away from that and covered So that's not an occurrence. But with an expected retractable roof statement, it is an occurrence, and it is a logical occurrence to look forward to. You know how people are. They hear something, they want to go over and check out what's going on. So will it be a cluster? You know what? Yep, certainly will be. In both ways, both good and bad. Additional pedestrian bridges are needed and parking. And I believe they're carving on that out in the budget as I speak. So look, this is going to work. And I hate to tell people, but no one's comparatively, no one is saying, hey, look, this has to have affordable housing. I think it should, but that's not for that area. All right. My point is that you don't have the whole of Las Vegas trying to dump its needs on it. Everything from Head Start to, which would be cool, or anything else. You do have a call for some assistance in spending for education because of the money that'll come out of that project, and that's. But compared to Oakland and Howard, you have to think about it. The A's are going to build a city within a city. You don't have the Athletics trying to build a city within the city. It's dramatically different, incredibly different from Howard Terminal. This is simply a ballpark with a partner that's going to add a hotel to it. And I think that those uses should be within one building. So this is a huge week, and I'm going to add more. Sometimes the videos will be short as I learn, but I guarantee you what I find out, you will know in a jiffy. Subscribe to Zenny62 and bookmark Oakland News Now blog.com, excuse me, and that ends this broadcast.